from the commentary Tafsir of Risale-i Nur, and we follow up the method Muzakara. So we read through the text together and share our understandings. Again, we have Dr. Colin Turner from Durham, England, and brother Abdullah Okan from Leicester. For the last few weeks, we have been discussing on the evidences of the afterlife and try to understand it through the attributes and names of the Creator, look into the creation. And last week we focused on the corporeality, the substantial, the material part of the existence of the afterlife. And inshallah, this week we will try to focus on the benefits of the afterlife, look into the worldly life. So we wouldn't be talking on the consequences of belief in the afterlife, in the grave, or the judgment day, or the heaven, but inshallah, we will be focusing on the benefits of the believing in the afterlife for this world. So inshallah, again, this is not a presentation. So our slides are a little long. If you have the text with you, I will strongly recommend to open the book and follow up, because it's gonna be easier not to get lost in the long slides. We are gonna be focusing on most of the 8 topic of the 11th ray by Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, inshallah. Yes, the first slide, inshallah. I wanna start reading if our speakers do not want to add anything to the introduction part.
No, please go ahead.
Yes. Man's greatest and most constant anxiety is his entering the place of execution, that is the graveyard. Man's greatest and most constant anxiety in his entering the place of execution, that is the graveyard, the same as his friends and relations have entered it. Wretched man who is ready to sacrifice his very soul for a single friend thinks of the thousands, millions, or thousands of millions of friends who have been eliminated and have parted for all eternity, and suffers torments worse than hell. Just at that point, belief in the hereafter comes, opens his eyes, and raises the veil. It tells him, look. He looks with belief, iman, and seeing that those friends have been saved from eternal death and decay and are awaiting him happily in a luminous world. He receives a pleasure of the spirit that intimates the pleasures of paradise. So, as our first part, he kind of generalized this. So every one of us is less and more are going through these same feelings. Is that the fact? You know, some of the people looks fine, and they look, they're enjoying their lives, and is the graveyard, the moment of death, is really a big issue for every one of us? That's the first question that came to my mind through reading it. And the second one, he's talking about thousands, millions, thousands of millions of friends. So yeah, I'm thinking about my life. I have lost a couple of relatives and friends in the past that I really love much, but he's talking about thousands, even millions, even more people. That's another question that just hit my mind at the first reading. Any of the speakers wants to step in? Brother Colin and say a few words about this?
It strikes me. No, go ahead, brother.
Brother Okan, you want to?
Yeah, can we start from the question that why Ustad wrote this subject passage? So we know in all of the tafsirs it's telling about the proof of hereafter and the benefits for the belief of hereafter and belief in Allah for the afterlife. But why is that? What is the wisdom in this that we are talking about, discussing about these benefits in this life?
Mm-hmm.
Should I try to answer that?
Yes, please.
The way I see it is private life and social life are in any case driven by the need for immortality. And most cultural and social political currents actually come from the desire for immortality. And I think Ustad was keenly aware of this. If people can't guarantee themselves a hereafter in a world to come, either because they're unwilling to believe or they're unable to believe, they project that desire for eternity onto this world and they strive to create heaven on earth. Now, this consists in somehow trying to gain permanence in what is a clearly impermanent world, whether it's through leaving something behind, such as a great work of art or literature, through leaving our fortune to our descendants, through having a building, an institution, or a company constructed in our name. We see this kind of, vanity project all the time. And particularly in the so-called Muslim world, we see monument building for the future, and every one of us, every individual is trying to build our own Burj Khalifa, in Dubai, I think, isn't it? There is this Burj, and each one of us, Al Khalifa is the family name. We want our names to last, if not our very persons, if not our very souls. And as I said, most cultural and social political currents actually come from this desire because human beings want to endure, they want to last, they want to remain. And if it's not by the orthodox hereafter that, the Quran talks about or the Bible talks about, it's by adopting what the cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker calls the vital lie. And that lie is the notion that we can transcend our own limitation through some grand project which leaves our mark on the world, which enables us to stand out and show that we matter. Because actually that's all we really want. We want to exist. We want to matter, to someone, to something, to everyone perhaps. And we want to endure. We want to live forever. Immortality is not only hardwired in our DNA, in our psycho-spiritual DNA, it's the driving force behind all of the cultural, political, and economic initiatives that we see. Each of us has a vital lie, a way of remaining forever alive, whether it's actually or representationally. And we also, and I'm talking here about now people who are not believing in a hereafter that is sanctioned by scripture. Most people buy into the vital lie of the society or community of which they're part. And they are embedded in the collective vital lie. And we, all of us, seek to work out our immortality projects throughout our lives. And the goal is to keep our name alive, if not our soul. Unfortunately, however, these immortality projects are almost always disastrous because it always ends up either on an individual level or a collective level with this crazy attempt to create heaven on earth. And if you look at the big political currents in the past, like socialism, communism, atheism, these are three examples of attempts to create heaven on earth. And they've all ended in creating pure hell. And the same applies to things like capitalism, liberalism, imperialism, and various other projects. So my point here, and I'm sorry if I've gone on a bit long, but I've written on this and I've researched into this, and I find it very interesting that, you know, the world is full of people who want to live forever. And Ustad was aware of this. And he thought it was an extremely important human faculty to capitalize on and to rationalize and to explain. And that's what he does. And he does it perfectly.
So, Colin, brother Colin, I'm trying to follow up. We, you know, in the daily life, we see people even pushing us this kind of lifestyle, you know, live the instant, get the, you know, instant pleasures, make the day, get the maximum pleasure out of it, the focus on the day, just do not, you know, think about past or future. So is this kind of not sincere, or are we kind of you know, buying into something, a fake offer? Because
Yeah,
as you said, on the other side, we are trying to, you know, take selfies, you know, keep that moments, you know, put them aside, and so we are trying to give a fake continuity to those moments, even though we just talk about the instant pleasure, the current moment.
Yes. You've said it perfectly. You've highlighted the irony and the paradox. The paradox actually is, you see that people are trying to live for the moments, or so they claim. This is to anesthetize themselves, because if they're not living for the moment, they are thinking of, you know, their non-existence and their death, and that fills them with terror. And so in order to assuage, you know, the terror that they feel at thinking of their eternal non-existence, they have to anesthetize themselves and they have to self-medicate. And at the same time, as you very eloquently said, they are trying to prolong the moments, you know, the constant selfies, the constant attempts to remain young, you know. We know that cosmetic surgery now has absolutely gone through the roof. People want to live forever. People want to live to be young forever, or for as much as they can. People want to extend their lives through what I've described, or what Baykar describes as vital lies. These attempts to transcend our finitude, to transcend our limitation. And you're right, you know, it's not sincere. It's part of this attempt to medicate ourselves out of terror, basically.
What about these lost ones, thousands, millions, thousands of millions? Is this kind of our own past? You know, even though we're just trying to focus on those instant pleasures, make our day, you know, just get the maximum pleasure, but those things which we have left in the past kind of bothers us in the sense that, you know, it's not just a lost uncle, a lost grandpa, but it's kind of myself, my own life. So let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I was a different individual. Now those are all good days for me. They're all gone, they're all dead. It's kind of part of my life is buried there and I can't bring it back. So is he pointing out this part of my life? Because it kind of sounds like exaggeration, like thousands and millions of friends have been eliminated and have parted for all eternity. So is he pointing out to all these individuals in the past? It kind of sounds like that. When I'm focusing on the present time. Okan, brother Okan, do you want to say?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to contribute about the brother Colin mentioned that Ustad also explains it in the third flash in a very good way. So if you let me, Ustad explains, I just want to abbreviate it, and says humankind has a deep, intense desire and love and connection for eternity. and he loves and clings everything around him with the assumption of eternal relationship. And if he thinks about it is temporary, it will end and depart from him, he cannot love this. So as Ustad explains in the third flash, so this is our basic, how can I say, basic emotion, that everything is binded with the love of eternal life. So this is also we can say that there's a connection between belief in hereafter and everything what we do in this life. So if there's a point of support, if we have a good level of iman, that we know that we will live eternal, so it will give us support in this world, in everything what we do. So if we don't have this faith, this level of faith, so everything will be problematic in our life, with all our relations, in our daily life, in our personal life, and with our family relations. So if we buy something from, when we buy a tomato, we want the best one. When we buy milk, we want the more natural one. So what is the reason? We want to live in a better place, better house. So the real reason is, the real motive behind this is the love for living for eternal life. So this is what makes belief in hereafter so important, so basic for happiness in this life. So this is the point that I want to contribute.
So again, back to this advertisement of the modern life, usually we see on the product saying 100% satisfaction. So in that sense, I believe there's no 100% satisfaction if we just focus on the instant without believing in the afterlife, the continuation of this. So we talk about the past, right? It has all gone. Millions of individuals, memories, things that we are attached about our lives is now passed away. And then, as you said, if I turn my face to the other side, the future, it's kind of waiting the same destiny. The minutes I'm, thinking about the next minute, I have no guarantee. It's kind of bettering, spoiling my present enjoyment, because I have no warranty for the next minute, for tomorrow. It's just, again, spoiling my present enjoyment, even if I don't have any belief in the continuation of that enjoyment. Brother Colin, do you want to say a few words on this part?
Something very quick before we move on is just that without the hereafter, without the true hereafter, life is hell, really. And it's because of this that unbelievers try to create a heaven on earth, while simultaneously, as we've said, try to block out the fear that confronts them whenever they think of the vastness of the grave that awaits them, and this sheer abject terror, which is caused by the prospect of eternal annihilation and non-existence. I also liked your likening of all of these countless friends and relatives that have gone. You've likened those to our own moments, the moments in our own life, which are, friends and relatives to us ourselves, the moments that we've lived in the past. They've all gone. The difference between a happy person and an unhappy person, I think, lies in being resigned, not to perfect happiness, but a kind of resigned contentment that in this world we will not have everything that we want eternally, but that there is an eternal world that we will get to, that we will come to in the end. If we don't have that belief, then life is hell.
A friend was commenting on this very interestingly. He was saying that, the happier life you had, the better relations you had, the more lovely, family life, the other life you have, it's kind of giving you more and more pain if you don't relate it to the eternity, think about the continuation, or depend on the creator of that moment. It's kind of giving you more pain in this moment. So the better you had in the past, interestingly, it gives more pain in the moment. It's very interesting. I don't know. He was, focused on this contradiction between.
Yeah, I think he's right. Absolutely right.
So, inshallah, I want to move the next one if brothers do not want to add anything.
Inshallah, we can move on.
Yeah, carry on.
Man's superiority over other living beings and his high rank are in respect of his elevated qualities, comprehensive abilities, universal worship, and his extensive spheres of existence. Man's superiority over other living beings and his high rank are in respect of his elevated qualities, comprehensive abilities, universal worship, and his extensive spheres of existence. However, the virtues he acquires, like zeal, love, brotherhood, and humanity, are to the extent of the fleeting present, which is squeezed between the past and the future, which are both non-existent and dead and dark. I can move on to the next one. It's kind of going on explaining it a little bit. I'll come back to this one. For example, he loves and serves his father, brother, wife, nation, and country, whom he formerly did not know, and after parting from them, will never see again. He will very rarely be able to achieve complete loyalty and sincerity, and his virtues and perfections will diminish proportionately. Then, just as because of his intelligence, he is about to fall headlong from being the highest of the animals to the lowest and most wretched, belief in the hereafter comes to his assistance. It expands the present, as constricting as the grave, so that it encompasses the past and future, and is as broad as the world, and shows the bounds of existence to stretch from eternity to posterity, from Azal to Abad. So, do you want to say a few words on the nature of man? He's talking about his superiority over other living beings, his high rank, in respect to his elevated qualities, comprehensive abilities, universal worship, and his extensive spheres of his existence. So, who is this human being? It's a big question. Of course, we cannot cover it here, but just to understand his nature, why he is really urging, missing, looking for an eternal life. So, do you want to say a few words, Brother Colin, on the nature of human?
It strikes me that human beings have infinite capacities. We have capacities and faculties and abilities that can never be exhausted in this world. And maybe a little bit later, we can go back to the idea of the child in the womb, because I think it's a very fruitful and helpful analogy. But it strikes me that perfection is true perfection and happiness is true happiness only if they're everlasting. And, as they are, they're punctuated by non-existence and annihilation. And that for us is meaningless. It doesn't make sense to us. If you think about friendship or kinship, the happiness that we get from them is immense, as the pleasure that we derive from having a family. Now, would it be fair to habituate someone over a period of, 30 or 40 years to a loving partner and loving children and a loving family, only then, after 40 years, to disintegrate the relationship by annihilating everyone and by condemning all of them to everlasting non-existence. You know, with our even limited rationality, we see this as a kind of, you know, a pernicious form of mental torture. In fact, if you don't believe in a hereafter, that is the default experience. Death is this, you know, egregiously cruel and punishing phenomenon that comes along, apparently completely arbitrarily, and plucks our loved ones out of the world, sometimes with no warning, and at other times after long painful illnesses, and then condemns them to eternal annihilation. You know, this appears to be the cruelest of cruel jokes, and it doesn't square with our sense of need for eternity, because, you know, we see that if we are thirsty, there is water. If we are hungry, there is food. Everything seems to have been, you know, taken into consideration for our comfort and for our fulfillment. And yet we desire eternality, and we die at the end of this life, and we're not going to be resurrected. We're not going to come back. It doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. You know, believers find death hard enough, so you can imagine the terror that unbelievers feel. And as you were saying before, this is the terror which can be assuaged only by this constant self-anesthetizing and self-medication. So yes, we are superior to other beings. We have feelings, we have senses, we have subtle senses as well as, you know, palpable senses. And we have faculties which stretch to the hereafter and which stretch across the universe. And they cannot be exhausted in this world. It doesn't make sense that this is the only world. So this desire for eternity, and we are the only creature that has this, is something which, if it's not fulfilled, makes everything meaningless.
Brother Okan, you want to step in?
Yeah, I just also want to mention that humankind is different from animal beings. That, as you start mentioned, he has extensive spheres and comprehensive abilities. Because mankind is created in a social creation of Allah, that he needs in everything all his other human being. If he wears a cloth, he needs 1,000 different men's collaboration or help. So he cannot be happy by himself. So every bounty, every ni'mah given to his friends or mankind is a ni'mah for him. And if they die, if they live temporarily, if they cannot see the hereafter, it will be a torment for humankind. So that's what makes human different from animals. So it will make our pleasure much more, and our connection with the belief in Jannah and hereafter makes our connection much more stronger. And if we don't have this belief, it will be much more torment than animals. So as Brother Colin mentioned, every day we try to feed our stomach 3 times or 2 times. But as you still mentioned, we have a bigger stomach, we have a bigger need, which is eternal life. And it's always crying, always desiring this in every action, in every love around us. In its spaces, it says, I want the real eternal life. And if you don't feed this, there will be no difference between animals, and it will be lower than animal beings in this world.
So again, if you consider our natures, we are concerned almost about everything around us. Is either it could be some whales or polar bears, you know, suffering at the North Pole, or some kids in the Africa. Kind of human being is attacked, concerned, related to everything around him. But it's not just present time, as he is related to his relatives, generations, but it goes all the way to the creation of the universe and extends to the after the grave and to, the judgment day, to the heaven. So it's only with these concepts that we can describe him as a human being. As far as I understand, it is that comprehensive. Brother Colin put it very beautifully. So some of his qualities looks like they are extending the eternity in absolute sense. It's kind of has no limits that his interests stretched out there. So in that sense, how this shapes our personal life, social life, our interests, we just read one part in the next slide. Let me read it again, if you don't mind. For example, he loves and serves his father, brother, wife, nation, and country, whom he formerly did not know, and after parting from them, will never see again. So if I put the belief in the afterlife aside, I'm kind of captured in a very limited time, even in this moment, just today. It's just related to my instant pleasure. That's it. So is this really the human nature, who we are? How it is different from any other creature? He loves and serves his father, brother, wife, nation, and country from he formerly did not know, and after parting from them will never see again. He will very rarely be able to achieve complete loyalty and sincerity, and his virtues and perfections will diminish proportionately. Then, just as because of his intelligence, he is about to fall headlong from being the highest of the animals to the lowest and most wretched, belief in the hereafter comes to his assistance. It expands the present, as constricting as the grave, so that it encompasses the past and the future and is as broad as the world, and shows the bounds of existence to stretch from Adal to Abad. Now he has a body, he has an existence, he has a life stretching to whole eternity. Thinking of his father being in the realm of bliss and world of spirits, and the fraternity of his brothers continuing to eternity, and knowing that his wife will be a beautiful companion in paradise also. He will love and respect them, be kindly and assist them. He will not exploit the important duties which are for relationships in that broad sphere of life and existence for the worthless matters of this world, with its petty hatreds and interests. His good qualities and attainments will advance to the degree he is successful in being earnestly loyal and truly sincere, and his humanity will increase. He becomes the most eminent and happy guest in the universe, superior to all the animals, and the best loved and most acceptable servant of the universe's owner.
So can I add a point, Baykar Abi?
Sure.
So I have also, it's a question. So can we say it's about inductive and deductive approach, that from reason to result and from result to reason? I mean the relation between the belief, the level of belief in the hereafter, and the qualities that we read now. So the real loyalty and sincerity. So if we have a real high level of belief for the hereafter, so we should have these qualities in this world, in our relations. So we can also read this topic from this point for our nafs, that if we don't have real sincerity or real loyalty and other qualities, so we have lack of level in our belief in hereafter. So we should increase its level.
he talked about some social implications. So I want to ask both of you, just trying to understand this. So, as believers, we had problems with our relations. We do mistakes, but I would take it, again from a personal point of view, starting from my own nafs. So, do I really give an importance to my relations extending to eternity, forever, or it's just a word? For example, you go to a marriage ceremony, they promise each other to love each other for eternity, but do you think that you're gonna be living for eternity? It's just a word. Or maybe in the past, the religions, the faith coming from in the afterlife was more dominant, so that just stick in our words. And in modern life, we just focus on this life, and it's all about our mutual benefits for 30 years, 40 years, and then it's gonna stay there, but we still say, oh, I will love you forever. Or can I was I able to explain my point? So before thinking too broad, I'm trying to evaluate my own point of view. Do I just approach to my relations from a benefit point of view? Oh, okay, she was good to me, he was treating well to me, he helped me in this, she did this to me. So is it just for this life, for a short period of time, or I have a concept of fraternity, companionship, being a friend forever? Does that really make difference as a human being to me?
I think it does. I think what you said is right. And I think also Brother Okan's point was extremely important. I think that our sincerity will be mediated by the strength of our conviction in the hereafter. If we know that we're going to be with people forever, then we will treat them nobly. We will treat them well in this life. But if we think that, okay, we're going to be separated anyway when we die, then we can become consequentialist about how we function in the world. And I'm just going to do it just for the sake of benefit. And I can lie my way through life with no consequence as far as I think. And I can do what I want because there's no comeback. At least this is how people act. People act as though there is only one life in lots of different ways, and lots of mutually hostile ways as well, as we've already seen, mutually contradictory ways. They say they live for the moment, but actually they're not living for the moment. They're saving up selfies, which is trying to preserve the moment. So it's full of contradiction. But if you don't believe that there's going to be a hereafter, why should you act with, dignity or with nobility, unless it's just to save face, in which case it will be insincere, as you pointed out.
I guess still, Allah created us as human beings, so we have some fundamental attributes, values, feelings that will drive us to that way to find the truth. We have a conscience, we have ability to differentiate good from evil. So we try to incline towards the right way, to be loyal, to be helpful, to be this and that, but it's kind of limited, very short, and sometimes some other feelings or lusts or whatever can come over, and again, it will never be, like in a continuous sense, as far as I understand. Brother Okan? Yes.
No, let Okan say something.
Yeah, isn't it like the topic in the Jeddedu imanekum bi la ilaha illallah? So we believe in Allah, but we are constantly having erosion in our level of iman. in daily life we forget. So we need to remember it all the time. So it's, I think, similar.
You believe in the Quran, for example, the belief in the afterlife is also again and again reminded to us. Yeah.
A quarter of the Quran is about the hereafter, maybe a third of it.
Yes.
Brother Colin, you were saying something. Please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we come to the world and we encounter other beings whom we love and with whom we form bonds of kinship and friendship, but this becomes meaningless if it's destined to end in separation and disappearance, you know. True kinship and true friendship is going to be meaningless if those within our circle are going to separate from us, never to see us again. As we said before, beauty is beauty and perfection is perfection only if they're eternal, because we have faculties and capacities which are infinite. And to think that they're, you know, destined to last only as far as this fleeting world lasts makes a mockery of their all-embracing nature. You know, one lifetime is not enough for us to express the love we have for each other. And if we realize that we're going to be together for eternity, then I'm going to treat you in a noble way. I'm not going to double deal you. I'm not going to trick you. I'm not going to swear at you. Hopefully, I would like to think that I'm not going to do these things. But if I'm going to die and be annihilated, and if I'm an unbeliever, you know, if I'm going to go to nothing, or if I'm going to be eternally damned, then I'll do whatever I want in this world to get the maximum benefit. So I think what Brother Okan was saying before, you know, is important, that it's an issue of sincerity. I think the more convinced you are of a hereafter, then that will permeate into your acts and your deeds and your words, and it will drive your sincerity, or it will drive, you know, the depth of your conviction. What interests me, though, and maybe this is a question we could ask, is why is it that people can't believe in the hereafter when there are so many proofs? You know, there's so many experiential proofs.
Yeah.
And Ustad, you know, spends paragraph after paragraph, you know, treatise after treatise, speaking about these proofs that we see around us every year. For example, he talks about mini resurrections, you know, every spring. He uses spring as an example of the great resurrection in miniature. Every year, you know, hundreds of thousands of species of plant are revived and brought back to life after a winter of death. They're resurrected in almost exactly the same shape and form as the year before. And then, for example, in places where there are 4 distinct seasons, every year there is a resurrection. There are other examples of resurrection too. Perhaps the most obvious is the daily resurrection that takes place every morning when we wake up after the mini death, which is sleep. You know, sleep is the brother of death, as we're taught. So we have examples of resurrection all around us. What interests me and what puzzles me is why people cannot see these things and understand that they're there for a purpose, to tell us something.
Yeah. I think the answer is same with the question why people don't believe in Allah. So Ustad explains in many different parts, especially in the beginning part of Ayatul Kubra, the 7th ray, and in some other risales. I think the answer is same. The reasons are same. If you don't want to see it, there are both reasons from emotional point that they don't want to see someone who always watching them. They want freedom. Nefis is created to have freedom. On the other hand, there's some intellectual problems in the intelligence in this century, especially with the science. Some people think that this is not. It doesn't make sense that there's only one creator who manages everything. But here, I think Ustad, this risale, this section also addresses to the people who even don't believe in hereafter. Especially in the latest paragraphs, Ustad will explain that the people who are the rulers of the countries, even if they don't believe in hereafter, even if they don't believe in Allah, they should admit this. They should accept this, that this is the main motive of human being. If you want to have a better social life, a better, like a family, you have to establish belief in Allah and belief in hereafter. Ustad also explains this in the first parliament of Turkish Republic. He says, even if you don't believe in the hereafter, you should do this and that.
Yeah. I think what you said at the beginning, though, when you just started to speak about
Yes.
not wanting to believe, I think is more, that has primacy over any intellectual obstacle that they put in
Yes.
in the way of belief, because intellectual, I mean, scientism, as we know, thinks that science can explain absolutely everything, but obviously we cannot bring God in a test tube in a laboratory. So it's ridiculous for them to expect that science is going to validate anything that we say about non-rational issues. But just on not wanting to, and remaining blind to what we see. I said before that I wanted to talk about the child in the womb, and we know that this has been alluded to in some of the really great poetry of the Sufi masters like Rumi. He has a wonderful poem. He says that if you were to tell a child in the womb that outside the womb there are skies and seas and deserts and forests and mountains and rivers, it would laugh at you, and it would say that in its own experience there's only darkness and blood, and there's no evidence of a world outside the womb. So, the child in the womb is acting like the scientists today, the unbelieving scientists. And even if you look at the physical makeup of the child in the womb, you can see that there are members and organs and faculties that can't be used in the womb, and which can only be used in the vast world outside the womb. An example is the lungs, and another one is the stomach. Neither of them can be used fully in the womb, and so they point to the existence of a realm beyond the womb where they may be put to good use. Now, we were talking before about our faculties extending to the hereafter. In this world, I think Brother Baykar was saying, we have faculties that can take us in our imaginations to the very edges of the known universe, and can take us beyond this life, and can imagine heaven and hell. So we have these faculties which we cannot use in this world. We cannot exhaust them in this finite, limited world. So we are like the child in the womb, with members and organs and faculties that the child cannot use. They can only use when they die, for example, from the womb and are born into this world. We have faculties in this world which can't be used until we die from this world and are born into the world beyond this life, which is like a womb.
Exactly.
I guess go ahead, brother.
Yeah, you can go on, brother Baykar.
I guess a bigger part of the problem is also what we call ghafla, heedlessness, because while Ustad Nursi is comparing, belief with disbelief, he always adds this ghafla, this heedlessness, besides the disbelief. So as we are believers, defining ourselves, we're believing in an afterlife, most of the time we are in need of reminding these meanings. We are still going for immediate pleasures, this worldly, lusts, and first of all, again, the instant pleasures, worldly happiness. Until now, I didn't see anything like the Ustad Nursi didn't talk about the consequences of in the afterlife, but he's talking about our happiness in this life through believing in the afterlife. So we are also, I guess, very much in need of reminding these meanings to ourselves, and it should be at a certain point, at such a certainty that with a big yaqeen that It's like in the next room, I have the akhirah. It's like passing from this room to the other room. Otherwise, we keep failing through our own lives. Always the first priority is this one. I most of the time resemble myself to a silly child going to the grandma's house. So there's some pastries and cookies in front of me, and she tells me, "Oh, I spent the whole day to prepare you a big feast. The real food is in the next room." And even I am as if I have no confidence. I don't believe her. I'm just stuffing myself with the candies. Do I have any doubt about her hospitality, her abilities to do to satisfy me through that food? No, as Brother Colin said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with all his attributes showing us again and again, he's capable, he's able to bring the akhirah, and he's willing to, and he promised us, and again he's telling us in the Quran. So maybe while reading the Quran, those repetitions, we need to turn our face, look at the universe and see those things, and again try to increase, inshallah, our confidence. Otherwise, that still remains as a big part of the problem. Yes, there are some people denying the afterlife, but as believers that claim to have faith in the afterlife, most of the time we act like the same, as if we don't, as if it's just a hope or just a dream, just it's there to apply in a big crisis, or I'm broken. Oh yeah, in the afterlife this gonna be compensated. It's not like that. It is part of our creed, and it's kind of with the Tawheed, takes the half of the Quran. It's repeatedly reminded to us. It is the real one. It is the living one. It's not the one that is
Yes.
I believe inshallah I didn't lost the connection. Yeah, Brother Okan, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just remember that there was a good idea that that interpretation that in the Quran Allah orders us for salat, but not tells the details. It is just وَيَقِيمُ salat, and as we can see in the Quran, the relation between mankind and Allah is just given briefly. But on the other hand, there is a verse of Quran, one page. It is Ayet-i Müdayene in Surah Al-Baqarah. It is just about borrowing money between Muslims. So, as a Muslim, I think which one is more important? Salat and Iman is much more important. But some interpreters say that the mankind has no problem in the relation with Allah. So if Allah orders salat, so we obey this. But in the relation between humankind, between Muslims, there may be many problems. So Allah orders us in detail. So in the same way, what I understand, so we believe in hereafter, but it has very crucial benefits for our relations in this world life, in our trade, in our relation with our wife and children and colleagues and etc. So because of that, maybe one of the reasons the quarter of the Quran is always telling us, reminding us about belief in Akhirah.
Okay.
Inshallah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, Brother Cohen, go ahead.
It's a very good point. It's not just Quran, it's the whole of the Kitab al-Kainat, the book of creation is also full of signs about Akhirah. Ustad can turn a tree into a theology lesson about the hereafter. Yes. Which he does at times.
It is a Quranic approach, we can say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And one another point, as Baykar, you told that people in this world, in this century, are are demanding immediate and urgent benefits, as mentioned in the verse, stated in the verse, يَسْتَحِبُّونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا عَلَى الْآخِرَةِ. As Ustad explains, this is for the mu'min, for the believers in this century. They know what is akhirah, what is Jannah, Jahannam, but still they prefer this world to the hereafter. Why? Because in this century, people choose the immediate benefit, urgent benefit, because they just obey their souls, their nafs and hawa and their desires. So in order to, so we need a new approach to tell them, to invite to Iman and Quran, which is to tell the world benefits of this good deeds, as the good deeds are the seeds of Jannah and the bad deeds are the seeds of Jahannam. So we can feel the joy, enjoyment, and benefits immediately, even in this world. So Ustad also mentioning this kind of benefits in this world. So it's a good, very important point of support for the Muslims in this century. Ustad also gives in the next paragraph his life, a very good example from his life, that he and his followers, students, were sent to prison. And this Risale was written in Denizli prison. Why? Because they are trying to tell people about hereafter. They are trying to make people avoid from Jahannam, but the same people are having enmity to them and taking them to jail. So Ustad says this is a very, if I don't have belief in hereafter, I wouldn't live for one day. But on the other hand, with the belief in hereafter, it gives me more encourage, more motivation. All these musibats turns to good deeds, motivation for Muslims. So we can see in Muslim life, if there is a good Muslim, if he has a good level of iman to hereafter and Allah, there is like just few people use that kind of psychological, how can I say, antidepressant pills and etc. So we can give many different examples. Thank you.
It's
We
a
have
good
very
point.
little time. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
No, I just wanted to say it's a very good point.
Yes. So I want to cover a couple of more slides, inshallah, before coming to end. This one example out of our personal lives. Belief in the hereafter is fundamental to the life of society and is the basis of happiness, prosperity, and achievement. It's only with the thought of paradise that children, who form almost a half of mankind, can endure all the deaths around them, which appear to them to be grievous and frightening, and strengthen the morale of their weak and delicate beings. With the thought of paradise, they find hope in their vulnerable spirits, prone to weeping, and may live happily. For example, thinking of paradise, a child may say, "My little brother or friend has died and become a bird in paradise, is flying around paradise and living more happily than us." The frequent deaths before their unhappy eyes of other children like themselves or of grown-ups will destroy all their resistance and morale, making their subtle faculties, such as their spirits, hearts, and minds, weep together with their eyes. They will either decline utterly or become crazy, wretched animals. Any reflection on this paragraph? It's kind of really ending with striking words. So it's kind of without that belief, we are spoiling our own human nature. Become the most wretched animal. So
it's interesting, you know, it's interesting that even among unbelievers, and I hear it a lot, when people die, they explain to children that person now has gone to a better place. Even if they have no belief in the hereafter, it's so intuitive for us as human beings, you know, and even if it isn't intuitive, they take it as the best explanation that they can possibly give to the child to save that child from going crazy. So, you know, to 3 and 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds who lose friends or lose brothers and sisters, their parents, even if unbelievers, will say that they're in a better place now. And that's how they explain death to each other. I mean, it happens in my old family, even my current family, you know, non-Muslim, and non-believers and friends who are, you know, don't have any sort of stable belief. This is how they explain, and they don't see the irony. They don't see the paradox, you know, that they're actually using, they're resorting to the kind of explanations that for us is intuitive. So what Ustad is saying is, it pertains to believers clearly, but it's something that unbelievers also do.
Brother Okan?
Yeah, this is a very good point. But the difference is like making it as pretending that there is somewhere like paradise, or really believing in paradise makes the difference, because children not only listen our words, but they also observe us. So if we are good believers, they can observe that we are not suffered too much from that separations around us. So they can learn from us that there is a real life, because my mother and my father are standing against this, even the harmful, most difficult problems such as that. So they understand there is a real hereafter, and they don't hide themselves behind these toys.
Of course,
if they hide themselves behind toys, when they grow up, so this is maybe one of the reasons why people don't believe in hereafter, because in their childhood, they didn't get a strong fundamental of belief from their parents.
Yeah,
so
you're absolutely right.
Even for the Muslims, it is very hard if they don't get from their parents a strong education or atmosphere of belief in the family. It is very hard. Like, it is as if similar with they are unbelievers when they grow up.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. If you've listened to stories as a child, when you grow up, you're going to say, well, they were just stories. My parents just told me those things just to, you know, just to assuage me, to assuage my grief, basically.
So maybe all the bad deeds of an adult, if we go deep, we can see the problems, that kind of problems in their childhood. Their parents hide themselves because they weren't believing hereafter, or they weren't living accordingly. And Ustad also says, when I was 1 year old, I get the most important lesson from my mother's lisan hal, which means his actions, not from his words. And I get, on my 70-year-old, I get from different 70,000 teachers. I learned many things, but everything was based on what I learned from my mother when I was 1 year old. So I don't think that Ustad's mother take Ustad and told him, this is hereafter and this is Allah and this is everything. But Ustad saw from their actions and spirit and benefited in his childhood that there is a hereafter, there is something bigger than the troubles of the world. So I think this is a very important point for the generations, even for this world.
Thank you. This was very important. Yeah, most of the time we ignore their needs and we think that, oh, they don't understand that. But for example, just from my own experience, I remember just the minutes, days of my grandfather before he passed away. That's the only memory I have, and I was like 3 or 4 years old. And you're aware of that. You remember that. You know, it's just the human reality. It's very important. Thank you. Brother Colin, you were saying something, sorry.
No. I was just saying it's an extremely important point.
Yes. So, inshallah, we are our time is over. I just want to go over this last slide, inshallah, before ending. The realization of the truth of resurrection and its occurrence are as certain as the elevated reality of humanity and its universal need. It's clearer even then. The evidence for the existence of food offered by the existence of need in man's stomach and tells of its existence more clearly. It proves too that if the consequences of the truth of resurrection were to quit humanity, whose nature is extremely significant, lofty, and living, it will descend to being a corrupt corpse fed on by microbes. Any comments, reflections before we close, inshallah? Okan abi, you want to do a dua, inshallah?
So we are closing.
Yes.
Okay. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.